Welcome back to Media Rebel Unplugged. I'm Janice Becker. Today we have a fantastic guest joining us, Julia Rock. If you've ever felt like an imposter or just completely burned out, you're not alone. Julia is the founder of Rock Career Development and an expert at helping people in leadership roles break through those imposter feelings, building confidence, becoming better leaders. And Julia, I am so happy to have you here today because I feel like this is a conversation we have all the time with women. So before we jump in, could you just introduce us to your background and how you became this badass leadership coach and speaker you are today?
And well, thank you for that warm welcome, Janice. I'm just excited to be here. And my story is an interesting one. So typically when you hear folks talk about leadership, they've had some sort of HR background, talent acquisition, something. And my background is in finance. My corporate career was in finance and accounting, but this is a field of leadership and career development. It's something I started way back in college. So now fast forward to today, as you said, the founder of Rock Career Development. But I like to describe myself as a recovering perfectionist and a recovering kind of burnout. Yeah, I don't know what the word is, burnout addict. I feel like I was addicted to burning myself out, and I'm finally recovering from that. But I'm truly passionate about helping leaders be more successful while not losing themselves in the process. When you're a leader, it's often that you are trying to step in the line of fire, you're trying to do all the things and be all the things to represent your team, and then a lot of times we leave ourselves behind. And I've learned that lesson myself as a recovering perfectionist. So I'm just simply passionate about helping leaders be more successful for themselves as well as their team.
I have felt issues with delegating. That's that control aspect. I've studied for a long time in leadership and it's always been really important to me to get input from other people on my team. But at the same time, I struggle with the delegation part of leadership. Is that something that you hear from others too?
All the time, all the time. So one of the things with delegation is what I have learned for some of the leaders. Sometimes they're just nervous about, well, are things going to go wrong? Is everything going to break if I give this to someone else? And the question is, if you truly trust your people, you should be willing to give them this opportunity. It's not just about taking things off of your plate. It's also about their development. So are you willing to rob others on your team that you're charged with supporting and mentoring? Are you willing to allow their development to suffer because you want to hang on to everything? And the second thing that I usually share is again that perfectionism mindset. If something happens, if a mistake happens and what's the worst that could happen? Let's look at the risk here. Is someone going to go hungry? Is the company going to go bankrupt? Like, let's really look at what the table stakes are for this. And oftentimes we've made a bigger deal in our head about letting this thing go than actually the risk that exists. And then the last thing I would say is we often don't trust our own knowledge when it comes to delegating. We feel like, okay, if we let this go and I don't have enough oversight, can I speak to this if someone else asks me about it? Because I'm not in the middle of everything. And we, at a certain point, we have to trust ourselves and trust ourselves in our roles and realizing in order for us to be effective, we don't need to know all the things. We don't need to know all the ins and outs. That's not our job at a certain point. Our job is to know enough to remove obstacles for our team and keep things moving and maybe perhaps send some communications upline, but it's not our job to be the expert. That's why we hire other people, for them to be the experts and for us being comfortable with saying, hey, my team's working on that. I don't have all the answers on that right now. Let me go ahead and find out where we are on that. End of conversation. But that paralyzes many of us. Like, wait, I gotta say I don't know everything. Wait, I'm not ready for that. And sometimes it comes down to us trusting ourselves as well.
Right. And I mean, true strength comes from admitting when we don't know something. I mean, nobody can be an expert in everything. That's absolutely impossible. And when we talk about being a perfectionist, because I also say that I am recovering from being a perfectionist as well, we get burnout just from that in general. It's not just the whole delegating part of it, it's just everything.
And we part of burnout is we feel that if for many of us, if we let go, if we give ourselves a break, that somehow we're slacking. we treat rest as if it's some sort of reward for being good, as instead of us realizing that rest is a requirement for us to succeed, for us to help our teams be successful, for us to get more done and be productive. Rest is a requirement. And so as we continue to pile on ourselves and never give ourselves any grace or slack or room, then we just begin to feel the weight of everything. And the other thing that burns us out is that we allow our perception of what people think of us to keep us working forward, right? We feel like, well, this person is expecting me to show up in this way, or they're expecting me to show up in that way. Meanwhile, they haven't even told us that. We've completely made it up in our own minds. And so we work to this impossible standard that no one else gave us but ourselves. And so part of burnout or preventing burnout is realizing that we don't need to implant perceptions on ourselves and make them up on behalf of other people. If people expect things of us, they'll tell us, and it's up to us for us to ask. If we want to know what's expected of us, what we need to deliver, what milestones we need to meet, we just need to ask the question. Don't make it up in our heads and then put ourselves at this impossible pace or standard to work. And I would say the last thing about from a burnout perspective is, and this is kind of the hidden thing, we have attached our identity to the work that we do. And if we are, we've got the title and we've had all this success, and if something goes wrong, if we don't keep things going this way, then we're failing. Something's wrong with us. We're broken. We're not as good as we say we are. And hey, I'm an imposter. All this time I knew it. Right. So we've attached our own identity and our self-worth to our work. And so that's what's keeping us bound and working at this pace and being so perfect. Because if we make a mistake, if we show any cracks in the armor, that then means that we ourselves are not enough, we're not worthy, and we've been imposters this whole time. And so part of the burnout work I do is helping to decouple who we are from the thing that we do.
Think that's really powerful, like you said, and absolutely that whole perception that we create that we think that other people have of us. I mean, that just feeds that imposter syndrome too at the same time. And so many people are like, oh, I just feel like I'm faking it until I make it. Or I dealt with that when I first launched the podcast. I was going out, yeah, I have a podcast. And I was like, at the time I had like 50 subscribers and I felt like such an imposter. And somebody looked at me and she said, nobody starts at the top. Everybody works their way there, right? Nobody starts with 1,000,000 subscribers.
And here's the thing, we think that 50 is not a lot, but imagine if you walk into a room and 50 people have all signed up to hear what you have to say. You didn't force them to be there, but 50 people came of their own volition to hear the words that you have to say. How honored would you feel? But because the social media and the internet has made us think that you've got to have thousands and millions in order to matter, forgetting that an audience of 50 people, that's a lot of people. And so we also have to kind of reset our expectations on what success looks like and the impact we can have. In a room of 50 people, you don't know what message you're going to be able to share that can change the world, and you can change one person's life. And so I think the barometer of success is where we also need to reset and not also compare ourselves to other people, right? Like you said, we can't look at the person who's been doing this for 20 years and they've got 10 million subscribers, and we've been doing it for a month and we're beating ourselves up like, why don't I have 10 million subscribers? You've only been doing it a month. You're not supposed to be there yet. And one of the key things that I've had to learn both in corporate and now as an entrepreneur is that there's so much power in the growth process, because you learn so much about yourself, you learn how much you can handle, you learn how to refine things. And then there's also a certain level of hunger and go-getterness that you have when you're building. But when you finally kind of make it, get comfortable, maybe we get complacent. And so there's so much power and growth that can happen when you're still in the building phase. And so even if you may be feeling like an imposter, this is a perfect learning ground for you to refine, for you to build, for you to try new things and to continue to keep that fire that's burning, keep it going.
Yeah, what advice do you have for women who, and I say women because that's the majority of our audience, so nothing against men if you're listening, but what would you say for people who are maybe in that middle ground of growing and they're starting to feel discouraged? Because, I often compare being an entrepreneur to the analogy of climbing a mountain, right? When you look at the top of the mountain and it is so far out and you're trekking up this mountain and you start off really strong, you get midway and now you're like, "Oh man, my legs are burning, my back is hurting, I'm thirsty. How am I getting up the rest of this mountain?" So what advice do you have for them?
Well, the first thing I would say is how important is getting to the top of that mountain to you? How important is it? Because when you get to that point and you're like, my legs are burning, if you don't really, if you're indifferent about what's at the top of the mountain for you, you might say, well, I gave it my best shot. I'm going to camp here, have some snacks, and see if I can get Netflix on my phone, right? But if it truly matters to you, if you know that that's an achievement that you want to have, that's where your mind shifts into, I cannot allow this temporary discomfort. I cannot allow these temporary setbacks or obstacles stop me from getting to the top of that mountain. And I like to think about it. If we go back to being a child and you're riding a bike, right? So you're going out, you're riding your bike. You fell off that bike 100 times and you kept getting back on. You weren't discouraged, like, well, I guess I'm never going to learn. You wanted to learn how to ride your bike. You wanted to see your parents cheer or whatever it might be. And so this is an opportunity when your legs are starting to burn and you feel like you're giving out. This is your opportunity to get back on the bike. This is the opportunity to get back on the bike and keep pushing forward. And I know it may seem cliche, like, "Oh, I'm tired. I've given it all I have. I'm tapped out." But we also have to remember that we have a reserve in I fully believe that we have a reserve in our minds and in our hearts that we have not tapped into yet. And we don't tap into that until we're exhausted because we have the mental kind of decisions that we're making and we're being super theoretical with it in our minds. But when you get to that wall, that's when that unlocks that I've got this, that like that you have to tap into that. But I don't think you get anywhere near tapping into that until you get to that point of exhaustion and something else has to push you forward. And then the last thing I would say is thinking about what your why is. What is your why? Whether it's family, whether it's something else, whatever it might be, what is that why for you? So I'll give you an example. So for me, my why is are my parents and then my 99-year-old grandmother. I do what I do I love helping people with leadership and all the things. But my why is that I want to create a life that will allow me to spend time with my parents who are in their mid 70s and my grandmother who's 99. And so whenever I'm feeling that I don't have anything left, I'm frustrated with where the business is, whatever it might be, I tap back into, but if I give up here, I don't create that life that I envision with my parents and my grandmother.
Yeah, no, I love that. Keep your eye on, what is the why I think is so important. And it is easy to give up. It is easier to quit than it is to keep trekking on. And I think, like you said, we have to tap into that grit of the core of our heart of like, why did we start this in the first place? And that changes that perspective. And I think it's okay to take a moment of rest and to sit and kind of sit with it and to maybe have a pity party just every once in a while because nobody else is going to hold it for us like we are, but then to remember to get back up on that bike, like you said, and keep on going. So I think that's great advice.
And if you don't mind, I do wanna shake the table a little bit. I do wanna
I love
shake the
that.
table a
Do it.
little bit. So, part of it also is that this is another angle for the ladies who are listening, is that sometimes we have been going after a goal that may no longer be aligned for us. And that's why we're feeling exhausted and tired because we're going after a thing that we no longer want. And I know this is completely different from what we just talked about, but there may be someone who's sitting here like, why is this so hard? I've been going after this thing. But if they really ask themselves, it's like, I don't even really want this anymore. I am out of gas. But because we've been going after it, we've got a degree in this field or something else, we keep going. And so this may be a moment when if you're in that middle area, and this may be a moment for you to reevaluate, am I still going after the thing I wanted in the first place? Or have I been staying this course because someone else told me to? Just being honest about where I was in my career journey when I hopped into full-time entrepreneurship. I was climbing the ladder, and my last job in corporate, I was responsible for $23 billion in operating expenses. I had teams of people who lived in other countries, the whole thing. But I had to ask myself between rock career development and this corporate role, which one is really where I want to be now? I had been chasing the ladder so long, even as I was growing my business, I was still chasing that ladder because I thought that's what I was supposed to do, check the boxes and all the things. But I had to have that moment with myself, like, Julia, this is not even who you are anymore. You don't want this anymore. Yes, it looks nice on your resume and on your LinkedIn to say you worked here and $23 billion, but at the end of the day, it's like, you don't even want it. So that's when I was more comfortable saying, I'm going to take this leap. And if I fall flat on my face, so be it. I can go bartend or work at Chick-fil-A, who knows? Right. But I figured that I owed it to myself to pursue the thing that I was actually interested in rather than I had been staying the course with because it was the right thing to do and it checked all the boxes.
Yeah, I have a friend who he started out as a writer and he is now the owner of a video production animation studio. He was like, so you just never know the direction you're going to go in. And like you said, you started out in finance and here you are now helping people with their career development. And I think that's a very powerful statement. Sometimes we feel really frustrated and again, really burn out on, I keep trying, it's not working out. And then your heart's not in it. And maybe that's the time to really reevaluate, where you're sitting at right now. What is it that you're most passionate about? And sometimes that why is still there, but I think it's just a piece of so that becomes the other thing for you to build upon.
That's right. That's right. And I think we also have to give ourselves permission for the vision of success to change. So it may be that, at one point it was like, oh, I'm going to have gobs and gobs of money and I'm going to be a cover on a magazine or whatever it might be. And as you get older, your vision of success may change. It may just be, hey, I just want to have a nice house with my family and, and take a couple vacations every year. Or I just want to have enough time to go to the beach once a month, whatever it might be. But we have to give ourselves permission to allow our vision of success to change and that be perfectly okay with us. We don't have to maintain someone else's definition of success in our own lives. Success is a very unique experience. Whatever is happening to someone else, love that for them. But when it comes to what you want, success should be a very unique and singular vision.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I came from uh, the Italian family, and my dad would always tell me that I would be a stay-at-home mom like my mom one day. And I'll never forget, I'm like 8 years old, and I looked at him and I was like, no, I will not. I am gonna be a businesswoman. It's funny how, like, I really knew that at 8 years old, and I mean, I'm a mom. I'm still, like, that was still something I always knew I wanted to do. That didn't take away from the fact, though, that I knew that I could still be this businesswoman, and what's so funny is I really didn't have anybody around me who fit that or who wore that hat. Like, I had a grandmother who owned a hotel, but when it came from, like, a corporate level, or you something along those lines. I didn't have that, but I knew in my heart, like, that's who I was at the end of the day. I was all business.
Man, and that's the funny thing for me when I wanted to be a ballerina as a kid. I was like, I want to be a ballerina. And then, later on in life, my dad did finance. And so that's really how I ended up going on the finance track. And then after a certain point, it's like, I don't even want to do finance anymore. It's like, I've been there, done that. I've looked at all the spreadsheets and financial statements that I could stomach. And at this point, I'm going to leave that to other people because for me, seeing the transformation that happens with leaders when they realize how they can be more effective and the action steps they can take to improve for themselves and their teams, there's nothing like it for me. No win that I've had in corporate matches the joy I feel when I'm coaching someone or keynoting and I'm seeing people like the light bulbs go off or they're taking the notes and they're writing down the action steps for me. Those wins will trump anything I got in corporate any day.
Love that. I'm glad that you listened to that calling and you made that leap and took that risk on yourself. And that's part of being an entrepreneur is we know when to take a risk. We're not afraid. That's another part of it. Fear is a liar, first and foremost, and it'll hold you back if you let it. And so I commend you for taking that leap and doing the work that you're doing today. It sounds like you're doing amazing work. Everything you're saying really resonates with me too and the journey that I've had. I know it's going to be helping other people. What's the starting point for you when you start working with somebody?
So the starting point for me is clarity. Every piece of work that I do, it starts with clarity because wherever you are in your journey, it's if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling confused, if you're feeling burnt out, whatever it might be, it's because at the root, there's a lack of clarity, whether it's a lack of clarity about who you are, what you want, what expectations you should have for yourself or that others have on you. It always goes back to there's some piece of clarity that's missing. And so when I'm working with any client, we start at let's kind of unpack and kind of clear the fog a little bit. Let's get clear on what we don't know or don't have answers to or we feel unsettled about, because then you can build a strategic action plan to address whatever it is that you have going on and we can be on that journey together. But oftentimes people feel like, oh, well, I need to go get a new job or I need a different boss or I need a new certification or whatever it might be. And it's like, well, those are things, those are tactics. But if you're not even sure why you're doing that, you're not even sure what you want, you're not even sure who you are anymore because you've lost yourself in this career that you've had for 10, 15, or 20 years, then all of those things that you're doing, they don't matter as much. You may still find yourself unhappy, still find yourself unsettled, confused. And so we spend the time on clarity. That's the bulk of the work that we do first. And then we move into, okay, well, now that we feel clear about our direction, about what we want and who we are, now what is it that we want to go tackle? Because oftentimes that lack of clarity is also it's pushing us with fear as well, because now that you don't know, now you're scared to take this step or that step. But if you got clear, then it's like, okay, I feel more confident taking this next step forward, and I don't have any fear about what's next. And I want to go back to something you said about success and failure there. Oftentimes we feel that failure is the opposite of success when truly it's a stepping stone to that. And if we were willing to own that and internalize that, it would banish a lot of fear from us. It would banish a lot of the other angst that we have to realize that failing at something is just a part of the journey. You fail it, you dust yourself off, and you get back on the bike. So it's really about not letting the fear of failure cripple us because it's a stepping stone to success.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Even failures can just be a different way of pivoting. I call it, I pivot a lot, right? It's just part of being a business owner, entrepreneur. If this thing didn't work out, okay, now I've got to try this over here, but there is no give up. There's always pivot.
That's right. That's right. And I think that's the other thing that it's okay to pivot, right? If this thing didn't work, it's like, okay, you figure it out. You figure out, well, why didn't it work? And you take the lessons and you learn from it. And now you apply those lessons to the next thing. And so when people, and even when I do some career transition work, especially for folks who are more senior, perhaps middle management or senior leadership or executive, and they have to pivot to something else, perhaps they were laid off or anything like that. They have I'm starting over. I've done all this work and now I'm starting over. And what we shift the mindset to is not starting over, it's starting fresh. Or when you start fresh, you're taking everything you've learned, but you're going in a brand new direction versus starting over where you're just going back to the beginning again. And when you're pivoting, you're not going back to the beginning of anything. What you're doing is taking all the lessons you've learned along the way to now go in a new direction. But now you're more equipped to take that on because it's like, I've got all this data now of what didn't work, what did work, but maybe didn't work as well as I liked, whatever it might be. And now you can take that in a new direction. And I find that sometimes that small mindset shift shifts how we approach whether it's a new role, something else in business, adding a new area of our business or shutting down a business and doing something else. That mindset shift really calms some of the what I call indigestion about the
Yeah, I always say we learn more like in our life experiences and more on the job than we would ever learn in a classroom setting.
For sure. I mean, college does not prepare you for what you will encounter, especially in entrepreneurship, the bumps, the scrapes, the knockdowns. College doesn't teach you that at all. And so some of that you just have to learn by going through the fire and getting burned a few times.
Right. And as my former guest had said to me, still wasn't made without going through the fire.
Love that. Love that.
Me too. I was like, I identify with that so much. I've been through so much fire.
I'm like, is the steel here yet?
I am solid steel at this point. Can we turn the fire down now?
Right, right. I'm like, I feel like I'm there. I feel like I'm formed enough. Let's turn it down a few notches, can we please? So
Right,
but I love
right.
that.
I do too. So for those that are listening and would they want to learn more about you and want to maybe look at learning more about how they can start this journey, or maybe they're not even certain that this is exactly what they need at this point in time. What would you recommend for them? And then where could they learn more about you and what you're doing?
Sure. So in terms of being able to find me, so I'm online, the Julia Rock on Threads, on Instagram, and then also on TikTok. I'm there as well with an underscore. And then email is hello@rockcareer.com. So you can reach out to me there. And then LinkedIn is my favorite platform. So I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. So my name is Julia dash rock there. So you have lots of options to reach out. But I would say that if there's anyone who's listening and you're not even sure, okay, do I need help or what do I want to do? I would say after listening to this episode, this is a moment for you to stop and say, am I on the journey that I want to be on? Or am I just feeling stuck because someone else told me I need to be here? This is a time for you to reflect. And if you realize that, hey, maybe I'm not on the right journey, and I need to do something else, this is the start of that path forward. Or maybe it's that you do want to stay on this journey, but you need a new direction. You need more guidance. Whatever it might be, this is the time to reflect and ask yourself the tough questions so you don't keep going through the motions and kicking the can. This is an opportunity to reflect and then start on the journey to where you want to be versus feeling stuck where you are right.
So thank you so much for that. And thank you for all of your insights today. I really appreciate everything that you brought to the table. And I look forward to connecting with you on LinkedIn as well, because I'm on there a lot too. I like live on that platform.
Love it, love it, love it. That I tell people, I'm like, if you want to be on a platform now, LinkedIn is the place to be. Business, personal, not Facebook or anything, but there's an opportunity for you to bring your full self while still finding great business opportunities. So LinkedIn is a hill I'll die on every single time.
I know I even made my teenagers get on there. I'm like, you're never too young. You're never too young to get on it. And they have a lot of courses and people and all the connections that you can make that I can't brag enough about that. I think that's great for people.
Same. I tell people that that's how I got my internship in grad school was I was on LinkedIn. So real opportunities come out of that platform. It's not just for show. There are
Right.
people who are getting great opportunities. And if anyone's feeling stuck in their career who's listening, or even a leader who's looking for something different, that's a place where you can see what other people are doing. You can see what opportunities are out there and just start having conversations with folks because it lowers the barrier because people who are on LinkedIn, they expect you to reach out to them as
Yeah.
long as you're not doing anything weird, right? Like as long as you're not doing anything weird or creepy in their DMs, most people expect for you to connect with them or send them a request. So that lowers a lot of the angst about, can I reach out? Should I reach out? Is it okay for me to reach out? The fact is, the people who are there are specifically there because they want to connect with others like you.
Yes, and there's great groups too to get in, women in business and entrepreneur groups and just yeah, can't say enough about it. So, thank you again, Julia,
Yeah.
and thank you for everybody listening today. We hope you've learned something about this with burnout, imposter syndrome, how to be a better leader and entrepreneur. We hope you've liked and subscribed and we'll be able to see you next time.